Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Revolution. As always, remember to be kind to one another. And also, what else? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and whatever else the third one is, they say. Like and subscribe and turn on your notices. I couldn't do another Galatians today, so I said, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of a break from Galatians because I was kind of feeling something else, and honestly, the next part in Galatians, which I'm really excited about, is a lot of just like defining the fruits of the Spirit, but also like the list of sins or whatever you want to call them, but it's like really you have to define them for their time and see what exactly Paul was talking about to kind of have the correct context in that. And as fun as that is, I wanted to talk about some other things today because, you know, often my life is communicating with people like through texts or on the phone. You know, I've got kids, my kids a lot of the time, so I don't have the biggest social life. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Seattle Freeze, but like when you're an introvert on top of the Seattle Freeze of trying to meet people, it's a real thing. It's the real deal. Oh, Zoe just texted me. I wonder if that means you guys can't hear me or something. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, give me a like. If not, I'll try to fix it. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Okay, great. This is just iced tea, everybody. Just relax. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about a little about something else today, and luckily, it's still more Paul. Oh my gosh! No, we got some Jesus in here today as well, but yeah. So a lot of the times, my friendships are through text messages and emails, and you know, direct messages, and you know, that's how I communicate with a lot of folks. Forgive me. A little yawny, a little tired. And so I wanted to talk about how I sometimes we're losing our this is good that I can't communicate. It's very Freudian. We're losing the concept of nuance and sophistication, and often in our thinking and our communication with each other. And I think it's something important enough to do a whole talk about, and how we can help. Oh, I'm in Europe. Hello. How we can do that. And why aren't we doing that? And being patient and kind with one another. Now, I know it's like when you come to Revolution and you hear things like that, you think, oh, Jay is beating a dead horse of love and kindness. And that's okay. If you've had enough love and kindness, there's so much to watch on YouTube. But honestly, I wanted to talk about this because it's like often, I mean, you know, we talk about what a shit show social media can be. But when it's a lot of times the communication that you make and how you do your work and express some of your work, and you get comments back and you talk to people, that's, you know, that's where you're getting communication. That's where I communicate with a lot of folks. And so the other day, for example, I put something up saying it's possible to love two people from different groups that are opposed, something like that. And, you know, you get the pushback, you get the, you know, I got one like wild, you know, the conservative Christian who's like, but first you have to tell people to repent from their sins, you know. And it's like, okay, listen, I know you mean well, buddy, but like if that's what your main focus is, your life is probably not going to be very easy if you don't know how to love people. And you're if you see like religion and everything like for an opportunity to tell people they're bad, and you want to put an asterisk on love constantly, it's probably time to rethink things. But that's not the point. One of the points is one of the people who was a part of a denomination that I've worked with quite a bit, and a lot of my friends are part of. I actually met with the pastor from that denomination this past week in person, and we had a great talk, and we had a great time together. And we talked about things in Seattle, what's going on in Seattle, job opportunities in Seattle, all the good stuff, and you know what his ministry is like, and he's working with a lot of college people and different things like that, and job opportunities that may be even available for me. So that's pretty cool. But we had a great time. It was nice to just get with a fellow pastor and just chat and talk about what's going on out there. Not that like I've never found my main identity in that term pastor, because I've always felt more like and I don't want to say a theologian because I'm not properly trained, but kind of an artist of words and religion, and there's something that drives me to do this every day, and it's like an appendage, is like an arm, you know. It's like it's a part of me, and I do it, and I continue to do it even when it's tough, and even when people push back, and even when the money is low, and when times are tough and the valleys. Like this is totally a valley time right now, and that's okay, you know, because I've also know that there's ups and downs, and that's just, you know, how it rolls. I just would hope that the valleys would just get a little bit lower, or if the mountains just wanted to get higher, and maybe the valleys come up with, I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll get a boat or truck. I just need valley walkers. You want to walk through the valley with me? My dad always had a sermon called Valley Walkers. And he walks with me through the valley of death. But so nuance, and I was thinking about this nuance because this one guy comes after me who's like, you know, pretty progressive. And it's funny because I've had a few progressives lately come after me. And it's like, we've forgotten to like consider the source of when people say things, you know, like, oh, I know that this person has said this, and I know them from their work. So let me maybe double think and take another look and maybe see how to read this. And I'm guilty of it too. I've gotten mad. One time I got so mad at this guy who was actually agreeing with me on Instagram, but we ended up DMing, and now I feel like we've become pretty good friends, and we'll probably hang out one day. So, you know, sometimes these miscommunications can work out for the best, you know. And I always love it when someone like shows me grace, because I'm always talking about grace, and everybody's like, oh, that's not very graceful of you. And it's nice to receive grace from others, because I preach grace because I'm not perfect at it. It's not always my first knee-jerk reaction. Knee-jerk reaction. But this guy was like, I put this thing up, and I'm talking about Israel and Palestine, yes, and how complicated it is for a lot of people. For me, I want to see the war stop. I want to see the war stop for both of those people, but also, you know, but mostly for Palestinians who are literally being obliterated into, you know, to nothingness. I mean, it looks like a genocide to me. Now, the whole point here is that I was saying that you can still love both sides and see the complication. Like, I'm not mad at Jewish people. I'm not mad at people who live in Israel. I don't appreciate their government. And guess what? I don't appreciate my government either putting finances towards more machines of war, believe it or not. But this person says, I guess mass, what did he say? Mass genocide is okay, Jay Baker, you know. And I'm going like, this is someone who should be familiar with me. I've talked at their conferences for their whole denomination. My work has been with a lot of people in the LGBT community. This is a very affirming denomination. And it just, to me, it's like, I'm not mad. I'm just saying, like, it's just a reminder that we just kind of forget how to like have nuance and how to talk to each other. And we get so fired that we come into some immature thinking. Peter Rollins does really, really great intellectual studies on this kind of stuff. And honestly, I honestly don't think I would be talking about arguing well and peacemaking if it wasn't for a lot of what Pete Rollins and what I've learned from my friend Pete Rollins. And you know what I would ask for that? Tell Pete Rollins you're grateful for thankful for what he's brought into my life and the addition to my life, if you think about it and you're online, because he's really helped. You look like a cartoon character in a good way. Well, thank you. I think it's I'm wearing this blue. This is a shout out to my dad's old televangelist day in the 70s when he wore powder blue suits, and he was like, blue looks really good on TV. It does, but a powder blue suit doesn't, ironically. But blue is a TV color. I got this little sucker on eBay. I have put lists of things I like on eBay, and I put a list, and I just wait until I can find a cheap one to come up. And I found one the other day for $10, this jacket for $10, because I like jackets and hats, if you can't tell. And it was like faded old orange, but I bought it and I dyed it brown, and I'm pretty excited about it. Anyway, enough about those things. So the fact is that we kind of get these things where we see people and we react like with these knee-jerk reactions. I was on this other one that was talking about like how the church was hurt this person so much, and so I went on and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry that you had that experience. That church sounds really unhinged and not kind, and I'm really sorry about that, and I've had some experience with it. And they write back like, no, this isn't just one church. This is the common thing that happened to most people in all churches, and there's just this need. And so I wrote back and was like, yeah, well, I'm sorry that most churches have treated you that way, and treat people that way. But, I've had my own experiences, and I was on the Revolution account, but it's just funny when you talk to people and they don't take into consideration your experiences, where we just have gotten so used to being so angry at one group of people, one idea, that we don't have the nuance of the human being in front of us anymore. That we don't realize that their experience may have been different than mine. Even though they might be the exception to the rule, it's still interesting that you're talking to someone who maybe had the exception to the rule. But we get so triggered and so angry that we just want to go like, oh, you're with who? Oh, you think what? Oh, you're discounting this? You're discounting my pain? I mean, I once heard a story about Carlton Pearson when he was talking about no hell and how he didn't believe in hell. And this woman was really, really angry with him. And he was like, well, she seems really like she would be on board with why. And so they said, now, why are you so angry? She's like, I was abused as a child by a lot of people. And she goes, I want them to get their due one day. And I think what we don't realize is often like the language of hell, and definitely the book of Revelations, is written for people who are hurting and don't feel like there'll ever be justice. And, I found that living in this world is unfair. I don't know what the afterworld holds for us. I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in eternal damnation. I don't believe in that. But I haven't also lived in a universe that I find that is very fair and that everybody gets what's coming to them. That's just not how it is. And unfortunately, on two sides where we have some folks who believe, oh, hellfire and brimstone, so it's much easier for them to be very judgmental because they're thinking like, well, if God's going to torture everybody forever, I can be a jerk for a little while. And then you get people on the other side who are just really angry about that kind of things. And we get all this different types of conflict, and we get angry at certain issues, and it keeps us divided. And I honestly think that the problem that what I really want to see is us come together and realize what like late stage capitalism is doing to us. Look at that. Realize what the government has done and how it's using identity politics to keep us divided. And we have the power to say, no, we're not going to be divided. We can accept nuances. We can accept differences. I can accept more than nuances. One of my best friends in Atlanta, he passed away a couple years ago, but who used to always come to my home. He always used to come to my house for me and my mom's house, actually. We would always go to my mom's house for Thanksgiving, was my buddy Chuck. And Chuck was a Satanist. And Chuck on his tombstone has no gods, no masters, but he was like family, and Mom, he called my mom, and she called him son, and she would take us to the mall and shop, and he'd always bring some wild girlfriend with him, and we'd all just go out and eat together and have Thanksgiving together. And, it was family. And there's nuance there. There was just it wasn't even nuance. It was just love. Love was this big, big thing that was really beautiful in our friendship. And so, to me, that is something that I can never yeah, I mean, just something that I hope for other people. And I've always just tried to love people where they were at. I've never been one of these conversion people, but anyway. Nuance. So I decided this morning to open up the old dictionary, and then I realized like I've gotten rid of all my dictionaries because of the stupid phones. Because we have dictionaries on the phone, and they're not fun as to read on the phone as they are on the. I think I'm gonna go buy an old giant dictionary so I can be like, what's happening, Captain? R. I know. Look, my blue matches my blue. I'm on the sea of diversity. Someone just said, "What's up, Captain?" For all those who are listening on the podcast. Nuance, and so I looked up nuance, and I thought some of the, and forgive me because I have dyslexia, so if I screw up a word, my dyslexia makes words like synonyms always hard to say. Synonyms. I want to say synonyms. Of nuance, words that are like nuance. And I liked it. One was hint. I'm giving you a hint of something else that might be applicable in my life. Distinction, subtlety, and then sophistication. And I was like, ooh, sophistication. You know, we've lost sophistication. And I realized like sophistication is not just for people sitting in ivory towers or rich people having dinner going, isn't this sophisticated? It's not even that. Like sophistication is more of a word for like someone for a mechanic who's going to have to fix your electric car or your your transition, because he's going to tell you like it's a very sophisticated job. There's a lot of little distinctions and subtleties and sophistication. The opposite of nuance, though, and this is interesting, was crudeness, vulgarity, roughness. But then going back to nuance, it was like the ability, another explanation for nuance in the Webster's dictionary was the ability to express delicate shading. And as someone who gets tattooed a lot, I always know like one of my best tattooers I ever knew was this guy named Kat Sumsky, and he could do this black and gray art. He did this. I remember he did this Jesus, this like Catholic Jesus tattoo, and it was really phenomenal. And it had a Sacred Heart in the middle of Jesus's chest, which was like this big. And it was very sophisticated. It was very detailed. It had a lot of shading that you would notice and see, And I like that idea of you look at the nuance of the tattoo, the ability to express the delicate shading of the work. It's also it means the ability to express and detect shading in meaning and in value. So I thought that was interesting. So then I was like, I'm going to look at sophisticated. Why not? Since I'm the captain of sophistication. And like I said, it's not the ivory tower word that we always want to make it out to be. It's the state and quality of having many tiny parts, like many intricate parts and aspects. And that's why I said mechanic, something that a mechanic might have. And another word, which is an anonym, which is the opposite of sophistication, is simplicity or uniformity. And I think a lot of us want to get around. You guys are giving me some hellos that are really funny. I'm trying to hold a straight face here. Simplicity and uniformity is the opposite of sophistication. So I want to talk about us embracing nuance and sophistication in our communication, if you will, and our way with working with others. And I like that idea of we would be able to express and also detect the shading in meaning and value. But you have to look closely and you have to think. And it's not a quick judgment call to be made. And to be nuanced is to be like made or done with extreme care and accuracy. So I think, when we look at and we hear the word nuanced, it's realizing that some people just have things that they've really thought about and have come to believe and are trying to be very accurate in their convictions. And so when someone might say, well, I'm a Republican, but then, they will tell you what kind, or I'm a Christian, they'll tell you what, we can't just jump onto one thing, And so I was thinking about these, like this way that we use these often use these blanket statements to judge people. And there's somebody doing construction outside. I don't know if you guys can pick it up on this microphone or not. But black and white thinking or blanket judgment. So a few years ago, I was having a discussion with somebody, and they were talking about the church and how they were so disillusioned with the church and how they didn't like the church and how they disagreed with the church and all this stuff. And I came in and said, well, this is what we do, and this has been my experience, and I've had some rough times in church as well, but this is what we try to do, blah, blah, blah. And, we're not all that way. And she's like, yeah, like not all men. And I'm like, yeah, because not all men are a certain way, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, and I didn't realize that she was referring to a hashtag. And a hashtag that I didn't know anything about, which you would think I would but I guess it was mostly on Twitter, and I've not been a big Twitter person for a long time. And now it's X, and we have Revolution on there, but I'm not even on there. But I didn't realize like this was some sort of hashtag thing. And so we ended up getting into this really strange argument about not all men. Well, that's what when women say certain things, and then men say not all men, and it's a cop-out. And I'm going like, well, it might be a cop-out of a hashtag, but it's also true. It's like there was another one that said believe all women. Like if I said believe all men or believe all Christians or believe all anything, you would be like, that's not smart. Or, but if I say not all these people, not all these things, you go, okay, that makes sense. But the fact is we've gotten to a point where we want to not even be able to defend. Like we want people to not even have a defense. So like when I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry you had that experience within that church. Well, that's the majority of churches. You know what I mean? Like there's just no room for a lot of people because they're angry, because they're hurt, to have a sophisticated understanding of how people really work, or see the nuances within humanity of people, and that we're all different and very unique. I've had a few issues where I've talked to different people with different things, and they have these firm beliefs. And it often seems like it's just this idea, and I feel like the left has become more apt to doing this than which is crazy because I'm a leftist, but the left is progressive folks who often, and not all of them, but some of them have become more apt to this idea of how do I even shut down an argument or a conversation from happening. That worries me. It worries me then we're not willing to have tough conversations. It worries me when we're just not even able to have conversations, and we've just figured out a way to put in even veiled threats of like, if you go this way, you're going to be canceled, or you're not supporting something that everybody else supported, so you must be bad. This conversation I had about the not all men hashtag, I didn't know about it, and the person was upset and thought I was lying because I didn't know about a hashtag. So this happens in everyday life. And if you know me, I'm not out to own anybody. I'm not out to hurt people. I'm out to have really weird conversations. Sometimes I'll share things that people say to me just so folks get an idea of where I get my experiences from and why I'm thinking this way. So I'll share what someone's posted on my thing or things like that, just to kind of get even a better conversation going, of saying like, look, this is what it looks like when we don't have nuance. When I posted one today, and my friend was like, oh, you need to block that person, get rid of them all. And I'm like, well, that person is a part of a denomination that I care about, and they work for a group of people that I know, and that's why it worried me. Like, oh, I had no idea. I'm sorry about that, But that's what happens when we get stuck within this black and white thinking. And I really like the way Pete Rollins talks about it. He's like, because we all need goodies and baddies, is what he says. We all got to have the goodies and baddies, and who are the goodies and who are the baddies? And so that idea that we get this like some simple thinking or even lazy thinking, or partisan thinking, if you will. This partisan thinking of sides, or you could even go as far as say binary thinking about others, and we've got to have this goodies or baddies. And so I was thinking about this and thinking about like, well, how do we get away from that? And are there any verses that really talk about that? And this is one that I was reading, and I really thought it nailed it. And I was like, I know it's in Corinthians somewhere. And of course, because I knew it was in Corinthians, I should have known it was in Corinthians 13, which is one of my favorite chapters. It is my favorite chapter in Corinthians, I'd say. But it's not the usual one I read from. Because it's 11. And 11 says this. It says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put away and end to childish ways. For now we see a mirror dimly, but we will see face to face. Now I know only partial. I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. Now, you can see I'm not probably the most mature human being in the world. I have a lot of crazy toys and things like that, and I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I have to throw away my Matchbox cars. But he's talking about maturing. And so I started thinking about, well, what was it like when I was a kid, as far as goody and baddies and binary thinking and things like that? Well, as a kid, I remember going and seeing Rocky, where he fights the Russian, and Russians were bad. And look how, well, okay, that has probably not the best example, but, all Russians aren't bad, but, remember like James Bond movies, it was always, oh, what are the Russians up to? They're going to get us during the Cold War. And so it was like, just like this, that Russians bad, America good, and a lot of people think that way now, because of some wars we're in. All police were good, everybody, that all cops are bad. What is it? All cops are bad. ACAB or something. ACAB. Sometimes punk rockers have it. And I also don't like that. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and be a policeman. I was raised by a lot of ex-police officers, or some who became police officers. Now, do I approve of the way that these officers are acting to these protesters and things like that? No, I don't. But I'm also not going to go and say, all those people are bad, But when I was a kid, it was police were good, Army good, and USA was good. And if you were against any of that, it was bad. Now, of course, we all know that there's a more sophisticated, nuanced way of seeing that, especially when a lot of us, we can't pay our bills. If we get sick, we're going to go bankrupt, and it doesn't feel like the United States of America's government is really taking care of us. Or if I lived in a really bad neighborhood and my house continuously got broken into, and it would sometimes take the cops 2 hours to show up, if they even showed up in my neighborhood at the time. So, when you grow up and you see nuances to these things. I thought, because I watched Miami Vice, that all drug dealers were bad. Like, I didn't see like, oh, maybe these are people who can't get jobs to feed their families. So anyway, you get nuance, you grow up, you see these things. I remember watching Rambo and thinking like, oh, well, Vietnam must be a really bad place because they still have prisoners of war, because I saw it in a movie. Because I was a kid, and I thought like a kid. And I thought in a very black and white. And I thought, when I grow up, I'm going to do such and such. Or when I grow up, it's going to be much easier. When I grow up, and I remember my teachers being like, well, you're not going to understand. I'm like, well, what is it? Is it paying bills? Is it this? Is that? Try to explain it to me. They're like, you'll understand when you grow up. And I have to say, I understand now, and I find myself saying similar things to younger people. But trying not to say it in a real blown off way, but just like, God, being an adult is really, really hard. Finding work is really hard. Paying bills is really, really hard. Being afraid of being sick, being afraid of being on the wrong side of people. It's very complicated. It's a lot of sophistications. A lot of sophistication in being an adult. A lot of little dark gray a lot of little pieces that we have to deal with every day. But hopefully you grow when we grow up and we understand these things. I saw another and usually these are people who I know somewhat, or when I talk about some of these things, I try to, not just, I'm not trying to go over strangers. But another Instagram thing I saw the other day, because, I'm always talking about how we can build community, how we can argue well, how we can disagree well. And if you agree with that, please like this post. But it was like, it said, it was basically, this was the gist of it. And I tried to write it down from memory. But it was basically like, it's not politics that make me give up friendships, it's morals, is what they were saying. Because I always say, like, I'm not going to let politics get in the way of my friendships. Like, I have friends who have very different political beliefs than me. And some of them are all over the world, so we stay connected online. And I can honestly tell when I've said something that's like overstepped their values, like communication goes down for a while. They're not sharing things with me as much. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if it was because I posted this and, they believe this and I believe this. And have I ruffled their feathers? But I'm just patient with it because I've understand it, because I've been there in my own life as well. I've had a lot of black and white thinking in my own day. So I've been there. But then I was thinking of another verse, and it's in Luke. And if you're following along, it's Luke 6. And in Luke 6:32, when also people are, all religion's bad, Christianity bad, the Bible's a fictional book, it's a waste of time. And I whether the Bible is fiction to those people's minds, right, I still find extreme inspiration from this book. And it's the most important book to me. And it's funny because a lot of my more conservative Christian friends think that I want to set it on fire, or that I'm destroying it. And then I've even had atheists tell me that I'm lukewarm. So, I guess if the shoe fits. But anyway, 32 says, 6:32 says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners, and I think it originally said Gentiles, even Gentiles do that. And we know those Gentiles, right? But this translation has turned it to sinners. Even sinners do that. Love those. For even if sinners love those who love them, if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that for you? For even Gentiles, or sinners, do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that for you? Even sinners do that. If you lend to sinners to receive as much in gain, if you lend to sinners, okay, to receive as much gain. But love your enemies, is what Jesus says. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Now, I would say that's pretty radical. Like, hey, you should lend people money and not expect to be repaid. That's Jesus saying that. I don't know a lot of people who do that. I've given money, but, when you lend money and you're, oh, this is a loan, and then that person doesn't give back to you, it's hard to not feel friction there. But this is what Jesus is saying. By the way, iced tea. I've been sober since I was 21. Your reward will be great, and it will be children of the Most High. For God is saying, is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful, meaning God. And then it goes on to 37. And I love this part, because this is a part that I get pushback all the time on this one as well. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. So see, it's not Paul just pushing this forgiveness and grace stuff. It's also Jesus. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will put you into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. Now, I remember this used to be a fundraising verse when I was growing up. But this is actually a verse about forgiveness. And I think it's a verse about giving. I think it still is a verse about giving, I guess. But it's giving to people who you don't necessarily think are going to pay you back. But now listen, if you look at the asterisk below this verse, you'll realize that, there is no asterisk. There is no and buts. This is what Christ is calling us and saying, this is how we love others. Now, this is a hard thing to do. So people are like, pick up your own cross, die to your own flesh. But when Christianity, when this faith, with the religion that I've subscribed to, says, pick up your cross, die to yourself, this is what it's saying. It's saying, allow for different opinions. Help those who you might not agree with. Pray for them. Be kind to them. Do these things. And honestly, I would tell you that this is the only way I see we're ever going to find a world where there's peace. Because I think if we could convince religious people to stop trying to make their convictions into laws, which I think is a trouble, and then we could pull that out, we could love people better. We would be less separate from people. If we could just maybe hopefully get conservatives and liberals together and say, hey, what's a way that we can make sure the government takes care of everybody and we're all able to have work, we're all able to have insurance, we're all able to take care of each other, we're all able to feed our families, and we're going to look at homelessness, and we don't have to fight over like if you're Muslim or you're Christian or you're atheist or you're gay or you're black or you're white, because really when we do all that stuff is what it's doing is it's just letting these corporations and these governments just continue to play us and spend billions of dollars on weapons while we're all going like, can't pay for groceries anymore. You understand what I mean? You see what the idea is here? It's not just one of saying like, well, you're a good Christian and then you're going to go to heaven and you're going to get a sweet mansion with a hot tub. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is this is how we build a better world for each other, for the other, and loving the other as we love ourselves. And so that's a tough thing to do. But that's also takes growing up. It takes maturity. For me, it's taken therapy. It's taken reading a lot of different books. It's made me question myself, and it's not always the first thing that I think of. Sometimes I want to see somebody suffer. Sometimes I want to judge somebody. Sometimes I want to like poke them back. Sometimes I want to own them in a comment. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that. I am human as well. But this is something that I aim to do, and I hope that people in the church and revolutions community see this and go, okay, this is our opportunity to live life a different way. And if we do it consciously with thinking like the greater good, maybe it's something we could spread around and not being like, you need to obey Jesus, because that's a vague term. Or you need to get Jesus, it's so vague. And read the Bible. Like who? Who do I read the Bible like, Whose interpretation do I take? There's so many different ones. What we say is like, we got to love each other more. We got to make room for nuance. We got to realize that people are sophisticated. Their minds are sophisticated. They've been through different things, It's so different. Like when I talk to wealthy business people, I feel like I have to like talk a different language. Like when I've worked with corporations to make certain things happen and things like that, and I've had to talk to them about the work I do. And, so often they want a certain type of control and they want to have their hands in, they're telling you what you can do. And you go, no, that's not how I live my life under that system. And we cannot work together because of that if that's an issue. But this is how I try to do my life. And I'm going to try to speak honest to you. And you might not be used to people pushing back on you. But for me, there being a good back and forth and being in a place where we're allowed to have some disagreement is important, And if that's not possible, then we need to look at that again or talk about that. So I often get in trouble with how I talk to people who are in power or have business or money and they're not used to being talked to. That's probably why Revolution isn't on a multi-million-dollar church and why I'm not a mega church talking in, a football stadium or something. I've shot myself in the foot just because of opinions, but not like deal breakers, but just disagreeing. So it gets harder when we disagree with people in power. But I would say there usually more fruit comes from that than disagreeing with just each other and tearing each other apart. I think we have to look at like the system, like, we should be fighting war, not people. Fighting war, not wars. So anyway, that's my 2 cents there. But we have to grow. So in my mind, I'm going like, well, I'm not, I did not like it. And I was totally against it when people were disowning their gay children, their gay brothers and sisters because they were LGBT, or laying them off from the church because they were gay and things like that, and they have the right to do that because they're a religious organization and all that stuff, and they have the right to their religion and all that. But I really disagree with it, and I really did my best and still do my best to change their point of view, even though it's not possible. It takes a long time, a lot of patience, a lot of conversations. I first came out as an ally in 2005, and just last week, a evangelical theologian just came out finally approving of that stuff. Everybody's like, oh, losing their mind. Like, this guy believes it's okay. It was wild. People change, but it takes time. It takes patience to get there. It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, that's one thing is like, I think we often sell people a bill of goods saying like, oh, this is going to be easy. It's not an easy task. It takes time. I think that's why I'm so encouraged by reading John Hume's book. And now I'm reading another book about John Hume, and he was a politician in Northern Ireland that helped bring peace and an end to their civil war. But it was a lot of 30 years of a lot of hills and valleys, hills and valleys, hills and valleys, and it didn't happen overnight. And learning that, sometimes you have to just make it through the dark night of the soul to get to where you hope to get. And even for me, having children, which is such a cliche thing, but it's true. Like, you think, well, hopefully it'll be better for our children or for younger people or Gen Z and things like this. Like, maybe we can make a better world for them. How many of us wish that our boomers' parents were doing that, Anyway, I digress. So when it comes to others, we should not act like children. We should not split up families. The point with the LGBTQ stuff, seeing all these people like, oh, you can't be here, we're going to separate from you, oh, we're kicking you out of your house. For me, like saying like, well, you can't be here because you're a Republican and my moral value doesn't, and your morals, and you're the morality police all of a sudden saying, well, you can't be around me because you don't agree with the same morals, or you don't recognize my humanity, you recognize someone else's humanity. So you're out. Now we're not going to recognize your humanity. You see what I'm saying? There's this, I can't remember who said it, but it's like, I think it was Nietzsche who said, when fighting monsters, beware of becoming a monster yourself. And I think we often just become a reflection, the opposite, but we're still fighting. It's like we're fighting in the mirror all the time. And it's a great distraction, and it allows our world to suffer as we just argue with each other over things that we can't really change, rather than focusing on things that we could change together. And it could be really powerful. It's hard not to feel like a crazy person saying this stuff sometimes as well. It's tough. But unfortunately, that's what binary thinking does, is it splits. It splits us up. And I just wonder, like, what have we become, as human beings? And why have we become so violent towards each other? And I'm not saying like with just fists and physical violence, but mental violence and verbal violence towards each other. And why are we so ready to just discount everybody and then make it impossible for people to argue with us and saying, well, that's not right. And if you don't pull the line, you're out, if you don't toe the line. But, and what I'm saying here with the binary thing, and it gets a lot easier when we're online, and I'm saying online we act like kids as well. With our politics, we act like children. And I'm just trying to say, like, can we try to think about those verses that we read about what Jesus said and what Paul said about being grown adult and throwing away childish things and maturing into, can we think about those things when we think about politics and when we are online and we're thinking about there is actually someone on the other line there. It's not just an image. It's not just a quote. It's not just a saying. It's not just a political thing. There is another human being involved in this situation. And I can honestly say I've seen people change. People say, why do you waste your time arguing? And I'm like, because I talk about arguing well, and I want to see a change, at least coming together, agree to disagree. But my goal is usually just that we will recognize one another as humans, as people. And that maybe that'll reproduce. I mean, that's for me is what love has done. When people loved me in really strange situations as a kid, maybe somebody brought me a gift when I didn't think anybody would notice, or someone said I was doing a good job. And I remember I was working at the Gap for like a year, and I was just doing double shifts and all this time, and some friends of mine who are adults and gave me a little note card that said, hey, we just want to let you know we see you're doing a hard job, we see the work you're putting in. And it meant the world to me. And that was just a 9-to-5 job, much less this crazy ass job. But it's amazing how a little encouragement will go a long way. I think we often feel like we either have to fix an issue, give an opinion on the issue, or make a final judgment on the issue. And rather than just saying like, hey, I see where you're at, and I know it's, I'm at this place as well, and, good on you. Good on you for us both finding this peace, finding a common ground here. But you have to say, like, no wonder we're all so angry and overwhelmed. Life is hard enough, and then you go to, go into community that now for a lot of us as adults, because we move around and do different things, and maybe we don't have a lot of people around us, is good or bad, is virtual, and we treat each other, and we're all overwhelmed and angry, and we're all overwhelmed and we're angry at each other. And I just don't feel like there's good fruit in that. There's not peace, there's not patience, there's not kindness, there's not joy, there's not living life well, even, And I think that's why you see sometimes like some of these famous people who like have no social media, or you can notice that they don't do their social media, like, because only posts are about like their book or their film or this coming up, because they know like this isn't a place I want to be. There's too much judgment. There's too much. I'm a human being, and I might take something wrong or do this or get. It's just best to stay away from that. I have a friend of mine who's a singer of a really popular band, and they took about 6 months off, and they just reached out to me yesterday, and we chatted, and they were super encouraging, and they really built me up, and you could tell like that 6 months away from being online and being. They're rock musicians, and they're getting pressured to like say certain things like, oh, like, like the politicians will be like, did you hear that AC/DC, it's not AC/DC, but I'm just throwing out some band's name. Did you hear Axl Rose said that we should have peace? Oh, thank God Axl Rose spoke up, because now, hey guys, war's over. Axl said it's not cool. But anyway, the pressure that some of these people get put on them, and they needed some time off, and I could tell like they're that pressure and that was taken off because they spent that time building me up, and we've never even met in person. We just become friends online, and it meant the world to me. Matter of fact, I took a screenshot and sent it to one of my friends and sent it to my girlfriend. I was like, oh, look how nice this is, because it really built me up and made me feel good. And when you're struggling in life, and I know a lot of you are struggling, when you're struggling just to make ends meet, and you're struggling like, and you see the two political parties that we have and the two people we have to choose from, and it's just like, oh, this is a nightmare. And you feel like, am I going to choose between World War III or Civil War? Like, are those my choices? And it's a nightmare. It's nice when a good voice, kind voice comes in. So don't take your kindness for granted. You don't have to be a famous musician or anything like that. But don't, if you think maybe I should send a note to this person or just say something kind, you'd be surprised how much more powerful that is than a million angry words. Even though we might focus on the angry words, I found like if you just take the extra time and maybe like write a little note, it really makes a huge difference. Thank you, Robert. And I know that this stuff might be simple, but maybe we need to get back to the simplicity of being kind human beings and kind adults, and thinking about that with each other, and not so damn angry and not so one-sided. I feel like if you stick with one side, like I did, I said, oh, the progressives are my people, blah, blah, blah. And I did all this stuff. I'm a gay affirming. Oh, look at me. And then all of a sudden I had a lot of those folks turn on me and say, oh, you're not progressive enough. Oh, well, you're a white male, so you need to step down and not do your work anymore. And I'm like, well, I'm not, I love my work. I love my, or this or this or that, and you had all this, all of a sudden, these people don't want you to speak anymore. Oh, Jay, you used the wrong pronouns when you were talking about God at the church, and so we can't have you back, and things like that. And you're going like, but you know me, my intentions and my spirit. I didn't mean to do that, But that's often what happens with both sides, And there's not even a conversation. I feel like today, like when I talk to like theologians and pastors and people in leadership, I feel like the conversation, so much of it is just getting past a giant barrier of them being like, I'm not going to change, 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 I'm not going to listen to you, I'm not going to listen to you. Just to the point where I can say like, I've been at this place where I was made fun of, and I never was like, oh, those Christians making fun of my family are really making sense. This makes me want to do something different. Or those people saying this about me and what I believe and calling me a heretic, but that really hit me right here, that really changed me. It's like the street preacher telling everybody they're going to hell and they're going to burn, and you're like going like, if you really believe that, is this really the way you would do it, by telling everybody how horrible they are? If you really believe that you had to save, let's say, just 100 people from something bad, you're going to go like, you're all assholes and walking in here and you're filthy and you got yoga pants on and this is bad, I'd be like, no, hey guys, I'm worried and concerned about you. So there you go. So I guess that's the talk today. I'm going to end with, since I was lucky enough to have an excuse to be in Corinthians 13 about talking about maturity. I'm going to go back there for a second, and then we'll wrap this thing up. And what was it? We read 11. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned as a child. But when I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now, and he's like saying, when we're thinking like a child, it's like we're seeing through a mirror dimly, that we only know partially, and that when we mature, we see more, and we're able to see the nuance. We're able to see the sophistication of the painting, or the vehicle, or the electronics, or the person. It allows us to do that. And remember, Jesus, like if you only loan to people, are going to give back to you. If you only love those who love you, I mean, like that's not real. That's just, everybody kind of does that because that's just an easy way to get through life. But if you want to make change, if you want to see a difference, if you want to end up being friends and turning friends into enemy, there's only one way to do that, as Dr. King said, and that is love. And so I'm going to share with you, I'm going to jump up to 4 through 7 on Corinthians 13 and end there, which I think is a really cool way to end this. And a great reminder to all of us. And this was also something that's like one of those like die to yourself, but it's also, I don't think any of us are ever going to do impeccable. And I think that's why there's that idea of we're all different parts of the body. If you're the body of Christ, you're all different parts. And you're all able to, some of us do certain things well and others don't. But I think this is a good thing to just remind ourselves of. And that's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7 that says, love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and this is the tough part, it endures all things. And that's Paul speaking of love. And in 1 John, I believe it is, it says God is love. So those are something for us to think about next time we have a political discussion or a online discussion or a discussion about wars and things like this. And we let people know that we sometimes can embrace two opposites. Contradiction sometimes is a necessity in the work of bringing people together. And in no ways is this like lukewarm type of thing. Is this a moderate way of believing? This isn't moderate. This isn't like, well, they've got some good points, and they've got some good points. It's not being moderate. It's just loving people no matter what your belief system is, and being patient with each other, and kind, and not envious, boastful, or arrogant, rude. If we can, not losing our temper, which is not easy for me either. So I get it. So that's what I want to end with today. And thank you all for coming. Hey, also, if you like the work we're doing, you can help support us. We don't have a patron because we're a nonprofit, 501c3, and I've not found a way to do a patron that way. Plus, I'd rather just give you everything here. I've been doing some more videos over on Instagram if you want to watch those as well. But if you like what we're doing and you're in a place financially where you can support what we're doing, if you go to revolutionchurch.com, we have PayPal and Venmo, and you can make a donation there. I get a call from our financial people in New York. We have an outside group that does all of our finances because we want to make sure every T is crossed and I is dotted when it comes to finances with us at this church. But I get a call usually every couple of weeks from one of the folks that works there saying, "Hey Jay, we need to raise this much. Hey Jay, we need to do this. Hey Jay, we got to do that." And so sometimes and so you say, "Well, Jay's been raising money lately." Listen, I hate raising money. Given my family, given my background, it's always been the butt of jokes about my family. It's not a fun thing for me to do, but it's a necessity. So I want you to know, like, this isn't me being like, "Oh, we're going to have we're just barely keeping our head above water." And when I put stuff out there, I do it. And I even have pastor friends who are like, "Oh, you're doing that too much," or "Oh, it's a little bit, I don't know if you're going to, that's really cool. Maybe you need to be doing more. Maybe you need to be doing that." And I'm like, "Well, I can't do more if we don't have the finances to do it." I mean, this is why I'm looking for a part-time job right now and not finding it, which is really discouraging in its own way. But we really could use your support. I think we need to raise $800 by the 30th if we're going to meet our bills, because we also have to pay the people who make the paychecks and do those things. And our bills are small and minimum because we have minimum money to do anything. I'd love for Revolution to do more, but right now we just can't. And your support is beyond. You make this is your church. This is your community. You make it happen. I show up and speak, but you allow me to do this. You allow me to read these verses. You allow me to go like, "Oh, I'm going to not do the Galatians studies today, and I'm going to get up earlier and look into this thing about nuances and kind of think about that and kind of share that with folks, because that's really on my heart, But also the fact that I was able to offer this pastor, like, if you need me to come speak and you guys don't have it in your budget, I can still do it because I've studied. I'm well studied. And I'm allowed to do that because of you guys. You guys helped to provide books for me to study and read and continue to do this and encourage this work. And I can't do it without you. So there's my pitch. Hope you like it. Hope you can help. And if not, please like our stuff on Instagram. Please like our stuff on Twitter. Please like our stuff on Facebook. That also helps as well. And sharing really helps. Sharing, saving, commenting, saying hello. All that stuff helps. Liking these talks with the little thumbs up, that also really helps. Subscribing here is a way that you can help us for free. Liking, subscribing, turning on your little notifications, all that helps with the algorithm, with YouTube, with all of it. So that helps as well. So it doesn't just have to be financial. So I want to say thank you so much for allowing me to do this work that I love, and continue to encourage people to live a life of peace and generosity and grace towards one another. And don't forget, there's someone else you must give grace to, and that is yourself. And remember, you are accepted and loved just the way you are, not the way you should be, because nobody knows the way you should be, but you are loved. And we're going to be talking about that in a couple months from a wonderful theologian, philosopher, Paul Tillich. So we'll be talking about that in a few weeks as well. And I'm really excited about that. So grace and love to you all. Have a wonderful Sunday, and thank you for being here. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.